takes a minute to go live. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to She Blurbs podcast. Today's guest, I have Kayla Perrin. Did I pronounce your name right?
You did. Kayla Perrin. That's correct.
So can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I am a multi-published author in the fields of romance, some suspense. I have a children's book published as well, and just some general mainstream fiction. I've got a few hotter books as well, if people who like the spicier books. So I've kind of written around a little bit. Yeah.
That's amazing. So where do you get your ideas for your novels?
Oh, my ideas come from anywhere and everywhere. And, sometimes it's from my own life with some crazy dating stories, or sometimes it's friends. Sometimes it's overhearing a conversation. My ears are always perked up, ready to hear something interesting that I can put into a story. And I have a story that I want to write, which I haven't yet, but like a friend of mine she was doing a play, and a guy who was working on the play with her, but in the sound department, really had this big crush on her and somehow thought they were in a relationship and decided to publicly propose to her in New York. I think they were in the middle of some store. So of course people look around and they're like, oh my God, this guy's proposing. And they don't realize that those two aren't even really dating. Oh. And she felt she had to say yes, because, you're going to disappoint everyone who's viewing. It's like the funniest story. And then she even ultimately, like 5 weeks later, set up a dinner so she could sit down and break up with him from an engagement that wasn't really an engagement, at least not to her. So that's a crazy story that I'm going to incorporate at some point into something, because that's too funny.
That's hilarious. Well, yeah. I actually had a story, like, it's not close to that. But I finally told my high school crush that I liked him. And we're like 33 years old now. And he was like, well, I was just waiting for you. And I'm like,
all these years wasted. Well, or maybe it's perfect timing.
I felt like it was his plan, God's plan to wait.
Yeah.
But so when did you first realize you wanted to be an author?
I've been writing since I could hold a pencil. So ever since I could start telling stories and writing stories, I've been a storyteller. But I didn't really realize people got paid to write books, until I was 13, and there was a novel writing competition that I found out about. And I was like, oh, people get paid to write books. Like, you're not thinking about that as a kid. At least, right. Not when I was a kid. You're just thinking you enjoy books, you enjoy telling stories. And but at that point, then I realized, well, there's a business behind these books that I see. And so that's when I kind of started to think about writing for publication. And I actually sent 2 manuscripts, children's books, off to Scholastic Publications, which I'm sure you've heard of, or have you? You guys hear it? Scholastic, I think, is across North America, right?
Yes.
And they realized I was a child, and they encouraged me to keep writing, and they rejected the first book kind of like, I don't want to say quickly, but they sent me back the book. But the second one, they sent me back a smaller letter saying they were seriously considering publishing it. And I was 14 at the time. And they ultimately rejected it. And my dad was kind of worried that rejection at that age would, be sort of affect my self-esteem. And I said, you know what, Dad, if you don't try, you can't know if you'll succeed. So I was young enough. It's not like I was like, 55 and said, oh, let me try this, and I got rejected. I was young enough, and I knew, like, if you keep trying at something, you can make it happen.
Yes, that's what my mom always tells me, because I felt like giving up on my podcasting. I was like, I give up. I'm gonna quit. And she was like, no, don't quit. She was like, if you want to be the next Oprah, because I keep telling her that, she's like, if you want to be the next Oprah, you keep going and you keep going, and people eventually will start noticing you.
Yeah, like, that's right.
So I'm not gonna give up.
Well, because if you give up, it could be just before you could have had that big break at something. You just don't know. If it's what you really want to do and it's your passion, then you owe it to yourself to pursue it.
Yes, that's true. I'm definitely not gonna give up. So what does your family think of your writing?
It's been, I think they really like it. But in the beginning, I have Caribbean parents, and becoming a writer, it's like, what is that? Who's a writer? Who makes money as a writer? Like, what? why don't you want to be a doctor or a
Yeah.
lawyer or a teacher? So I heard that a lot, especially from my dad, and to the point where I did go to teachers college and I actually got accepted to law school. But that was the moment when I said, I can't go to law school for like the next how many years, do articling, and this is not what I want to do. So I went to teachers college because I thought, well, at least I could have my summers to try to write. So now my family sees, this is what I was born to do, and they're supportive. And there's a sense of pride. But in the beginning, and even like 10, 12 books in, it was still kind of like, so, you're gonna get a job teaching? It's kind of crazy. It's just not, there was no examples like me. Um, Especially, they know of the starving artist, and they want the best for you, so they see the road to success being those steady jobs, the doctor, the lawyer, the teacher, something, the nurse, right? There's a lot of nurses in my community, the Jamaicans, there's a lot of that. But there's a lot of people who, like one of my friends who did become a lawyer, who like years afterwards said, Kayla, I really admire you because you pursued what you really wanted to do. She said, I pursued law because that was expected of me, but I have yet to really find my passion.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to try what you got to, what you're going to try, and have no regrets, right? Yeah. Don't try it too late and then say, oh, if only I had done it sooner. I figured if I tried it younger, at least I'd have no regrets.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of my parents, because we have Native American in us, and they've always like wanted me to join the military, and I'm like, I don't want to be military. And I was like, I want to be a journalist, and I was like, what money can you make being a journalist? Don't you know journalists get killed? And I'm like, yeah. Anyone gets killed. And she was like, well, you're be nosing in people's business and stuff, and they'll be trying to kill you. And I'm like, oh, here we go.
People get killed in the military too, right?
Exactly.
I think your family watched The Pelican Brief. Do you remember that movie? Yeah. I just rewatched that, and so they probably watched that, and they're like, oh no. If she gets into a story that's too big, she could die. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not that bad. I know when to run.
yeah, exactly.
So, do you hear much from your readers, and what kind of things do they tell you?
I do, and I love hearing from my readers. That kind of always gives you that extra drive and push to keep going. And one of the most memorable letters, and probably the most memorable one really, was when I wrote a book called The Delta Sisters, about 3 generations of mothers and daughters. And, there's always some drama. There's, you love your mom, there's stress, there's that's just a normal relationship. It's not all smooth sailing. And one person wrote to me and told me that my book gave her the courage to go home and face her mom again after 20 years of not talking to her. And that was like, wow. Like it's actually a pretty overwhelming thing. She had not talked to her mother, and, just reading about the struggles and being able to relate to it in my story gave her that courage. So that's a pretty profound letter.
Do you have any of those books on your Amazon page? Like, can we purchase those on Amazon?
You can. The Delta Sisters, I hope, you mean like as a physical book or an ebook?
Or both?
Book. Yeah, no, you can get them. Hopefully, I hope they're still. Yeah, if you go to my Amazon page, you'll find them.
Okay, because I want my mom to read it.
Yeah. Okay.
Me and her both need to read, because our relationship is not good. But I'm gonna give it to her for her birthday and let her be like, read this, Mom. Maybe it can help out.
But I hope that it resonates with her in that way, because we love each other, but it's not always easy. And I think if we can remember that love and understand that we are all like humans, like sometimes we don't see our moms I think we see them as moms and forget that they're also a human being who's complex. Like, because I have a daughter, and that's what I find myself thinking. Like, does she think I know everything, or I feel I know everything because I'm mom? No, I'm human. I make mistakes. So I think it's a good read for that reason. So hopefully it helps.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm definitely gonna buy that for her. So, can you give our listeners like a little summary of the Age of Love series featuring Bella and Andre?
Okay, so this is The Age of Love series is an ebook series that I've put out featuring Bella, who is 40, and Andre, who's 30. So she's an older woman, younger man, and the chemistry is hot. And she feels, like, because we often have a hang up like this. Sometimes you're a little older. We always see the older man, younger woman, but we feel like, you're called cougar if you're the older woman and you're with the younger man. But so she doesn't think that there can be anything serious between them. But he's really into her. So she's like, okay, all right, I'll put my guard down. Like we can have a fling, that's okay. But the fling turns to more for both of them. And there's feelings develop, but he's got a crazy ex who is not wanting to let him go, who's coming back for him. So it's kind of a story told over a few novellas, and I have the last one that's supposed to come out, which is horribly delayed. If anyone's listening to this, I had some life stuff kind of happen that just kind of put me out of that frame and a mind and ability at that time to even finish that. But it's coming, because that's one of the big things I keep hearing from my readers. When's the next Age of Love story coming? When is it coming? Because I left it off on a cliffhanger. But yeah, so it gives us a taste of, a woman who's 40 still got it going on. That's not that old. And her love affair with a younger guy.
It kind of reminds me of how Stella got her groove back. I want
kind of.
But yeah, it definitely reminds me of that. So there's how many books in the series?
There's 3 that are published, and the 4th one I have, like, I'm just editing. And I kind of put it down because, just as I said, the headspace, and I had some other contracts to do, so I put it to the side. But that should be coming out hopefully in the next month. I just want to make sure it's perfect. Sometimes I think I over edit. Like, I'm like, I think the readers would just be happy if I put it out like this. Like, why am I, going through my head and making it have to be every word is like perfect when they're like, give us the book, Kayla. We want to know what happens next. So that's coming soon.
Have you ever changed any of the books? Like the last book that you're writing, have you ever like threw it away and then rewrote it like some people do? Like when they don't like the story, they restart it over. Like,
that can happen, but I really try not. Like I think the idea of restarting something, like, let's say I put 100 pages into it, it's kind of devastating. So if I can save it, I always think of how I can use it in something else if it's not right for what I'm doing. But otherwise, I try to find a way to make it work. So for me, instead of just writing everything first, I really try to overplot in my mind. So if I'm at the grocery store, I'm thinking about the story. If I'm driving, I'm thinking about the story. And when I'm sleeping, I'm thinking about the story. So the pieces come together. And if they don't, then I don't proceed. And I've got a story like that right now that I'm trying to figure out, that's got some intrigue. And I want it to kind of be set within like the computer world in terms of an app that's developed. And then I'm thinking, I'm getting way too much into the computer, which I don't know much about. Like I want it to be the thing that is sort of the premise of a mystery that happens. There's a murder that happens because of something that happens on social media. But I don't want to be able to get into all this over technical stuff that I think might bore the reader. So I'm trying to work that out now. And if I can't figure out how to work it out, I'm going to have to shelve it. So I'm trying to work that, and I'm not quite getting it where I want it. But hopefully inspiration will come, But if it doesn't work, then that way I haven't wasted time writing the first 3-4 chapters and then go, oh, what do I do now? Yeah.
That's what happened to me. Like, I have problems with starting my book, and then when I start it, I get to the 5th chapter and I'm just like, I don't like it. So like, I wrote a book in high school about high school bullying, and it's just been in my closet like forever. And I just don't know how to finish it, like how to complete it. It's just driving me crazy.
And that is exactly what happens. So like I've done this workshop in the past where it basically helps people with the plot. So that the way I process it, to figure out all of the elements now and like what the big conflict would be in the end, so that it helps you realize, are you going to get to chapter 5 and realize this is no, or do you have enough to push through? Because it's hard to, I don't know, you don't even want to let go of stuff that you created. Like, you know what I mean? Like you feel a connection to it, especially this bullying thing. So I'm sure there's got to be a way for you to figure it out. You just have to, maybe pull it out, dust it off, think about it, and I don't know.
Just I don't know either. My brother read it and he's pretty. He doesn't sugarcoat stuff, and he was like, "What is this?"
Oh no.
He was like, "You need to start this over," and I'm like, "Okay." So it's just been sitting there, but
and that is sometimes you have to acknowledge, you know what, I do have to start this over, and that's okay, because there's no point in pushing forward if you're not really into it, because then the reader's not going to be into it. And it's got to be a story that's worth telling. So you can't just write it just to say, okay, well, I finished that book on bullying, and it doesn't resonate with anyone.
yeah, true. So I was doing a little research online, and I noticed that you was a stand-in on the show Suits. I think is it Suits, or am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah, Suits. The popular show that Meghan Markle,
Yeah.
she was an actress on that show, yes. And I didn't work on it until she was gone, but I know, like, I've got lots of friends who worked on it with her. So I came in, I think maybe a season or two. I don't know when she left, but I came in after she left. So there's lots of pictures of her on the wall, and everyone, of course, then when she got married to Prince Harry, it was all this big, kind of excitement. But yeah, I'm a
Nice.
standing, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I work in the film business as well, and do some of that stuff, and it's still within the creative realm, which I like. I think I was always bound to do something creative.
Wow, that's amazing. So what other shows have you been on, featured on?
Okay, so have you watched The Handmaid's Tale?
Yeah, I have.
Okay,
Oh,
well, you'll
really?
see. Oh yeah, like, I think the very first episode of the first season, I'm in the first scene when Elizabeth's character goes through the kitchen of the house, the mansion where she's going to be working, and I'm one of the Marthas. So we're wearing, like, those green smocks and the head wrap thing, and I'm in the kitchen cooking. So
Wow.
even, like, one of my former teachers, who I'm still in touch with, he didn't know, and then I said, "Yeah, that's me." So he went back. He's like, "Oh my God," because if you're not looking for me as a background performer, you're looking at the main character. But I'm in the first three seasons as a regular Martha. So you'll see me out on the street shopping. You'll see me at what was that one scene where the one of what was it? One of the guards got run over and his head exploded. I was in the crowd screaming. I mean, I'm there. Like, that was a constant show. Continuity, Martha.
Oh
And
my.
yeah. Do you
I'm
remember
definitely gonna be
Designated?
watching.
Yeah. Also, like, that's the thing. So when you rewatch, now you're like, oh, I'm gonna watch.
And be
Yeah.
looking for you. Like,
Yeah.
you're right. Like, whenever I watch the show, I never pay attention to the background. I was only focusing on the main people. But now
Yeah.
I'm gonna definitely look.
There
That,
was, I think it was, it's got to be, I think, are they on season 5? So season 3, maybe there is if you watch the show, there's the scene when Elizabeth's character is trying to escape, and she's dressed up as a Martha. So it's just me and, like, 3 of the actors in that scene. So if you watch that, you'll know, oh yeah, that's Kayla, because it's like, we're trying to shuffle her to safety, pretend she's a Martha, like us, out there shopping in the market. Yeah, it's fun.
wow. Wow, that is amazing. So how did you get to be an extra? Like, how do you do that? Do you just show up and they say, "Hey, you want to be an extra?" Like, how does that happen?
Well, it can happen like that. You can look in the paper or online and see something where they're looking for extras, and you can just sign up. But at one point, I went to an open audition for a show, and I landed the part. And then that was my first actual acting gig, was my first ever audition. So I did that, and then while I was, kind of working or going to school, I would work as an extra, because a lot of the time you can go to auditions and it's hard always to land the audition. So there's a lot of competition in terms of trying to make it big. Obviously, you can get a commercial here or there, but the one thing they always need at least in the Toronto area, because they film so much here, are the background performers. And once you're in the union, the pay is really pretty good pay. So, I got involved in that world as a way to keep making money, to keep being on set, and just to kind of have, fun with another creative outlet. And
Nice.
yeah, it's
That's
fun.
amazing. I'm gonna definitely give it. No, I'm too shy.
No, you could. You absolutely. I mean, it's a little different right now, of course, with COVID, because I was standing in on a show that, oh gosh, was called Lady Dicks, and now they've changed the name. Pretty Hard Cases, I think. It's going to be airing on NBC. Adrienne C. Moore, who was on Orange is the New Black, I was standing in for her. But now it's kind of like wearing the masks, and everyone's got to have 3 COVID tests a week, and kind of separating people. It's kind of crazy. It's not the best time, obviously, to be doing that. But it's still going on. It's still happening. The business is still. So for me, I'm like, you know what? I kind of did a lot more film in the last few years, sort of in a way taking a little bit of a mental break from kind of writing as much as I was. And now I'm like, no, I need to get back to my writing more so than working in film,
Nice. So, do you plan on booking any more gigs or anything?
Well, I have no problem with that. I think I'm going to be more selective with with the gigs that I book. Um, you know, Especially now. But there are some good gigs, and like for me, I did like a stand-in gig for one thing, and the director that I met, and I was a stand-in for the whole show. So at the end of it, I never told anyone I was a writer to start with, because I don't want to be that woman on set like, hey, by the way, I got some books. Then you look like you're just trying to push yourself and your agenda. But when we finished, I gave the director of one of my novels. I gave her actually the Delta Sisters, and she
Wow.
was like, "You're a novelist?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And hopefully, if she likes the story, then she might reach out to me, or you never know what might come from that. So
Mhm.
definitely like working with some good people on maybe some smaller projects. I'm open. I'm open, but I'm gonna, like as I said, be selective.
Yeah, like listening to some of the stories that you say you've written, like I feel like they could be made into movies. Like
Oh,
the Age of Love series, definitely. Definitely I could see that being made into a series,
okay.
like movies,
Should it be
like they do
steamy?
with
Should it be hot and steamy?
Yeah. I'm gonna put it on Lifetime because, well, maybe on Lifetime.
Yeah,
But
like to a certain point. It could work. It could
yeah,
work. Lifetime's got some good story, and especially they like that intrigue element. So that crazy ex-girlfriend, that
yeah,
could work in there. Yeah. I,
definitely.
I might try to push that. Maybe try to
Yeah.
get connected with that.
Because me and my mom, we always watch Lifetime. That's like our favorite thing to do. We'll be downstairs eating or something, watching Lifetime.
Okay.
So, yeah, definitely. So, what advice would you give those who are in the same career path as yourself, like the acting and writing novels and stuff like that?
Well, I think the one thing I would say is you have to do your research to make sure, research studying whatever, to make sure that you make yourself as good as you can be for your craft. Like, don't just think because you can hold a pen and because you can like write words on paper that makes you an author. But if you have that desire to tell the stories, and you're not certain how to put all the words together, or you're not certain about plotting, then take the time to learn that, because you can learn that. And so I think you have to come at it with a little bit of humility in terms of understanding that it's not just a great idea. Because I hear from people all the time, "Oh, I got this great idea. It would be a bestseller instantly." Well, why? So many people have great ideas. So many
Exactly.
people have some stuff in their lives that they could write about that would be interesting. But and one woman said to me once, and she asked me to read her book, and I read it, and it wasn't good. Let's put it that way. But I tried to tell her, and she didn't want to hear anything I had to say. She didn't want to hear me say like how she needed to kind of build up the suspense elements or build up the characters. She didn't want to hear it. And she's like, "I'm just going to take this somewhere else. I'm going to just like put myself and it's going to blow up." Well, I've never heard of her again or from her again. So it's okay. Like even when I send my books to an editor, I'm still always like nervous. Like, is she going to say it's okay? Because they come back with advice to say how to make it better. So learn how to put your craft together, and that's fine. So you have your good idea. Now you've got to figure out how to present that idea that's going to resonate with the readers. And that takes you being willing to say, okay, this isn't perfect. So you also have to have a bit of a thick skin. It's okay. I mean, it's okay if you get some criticism. Don't
Yeah.
think it's the end of the world. Hopefully it's constructive criticism. So let's say you take a class. Hopefully whoever is doing the instructing is going to tell you things in the right way to encourage you. But if you find someone who's like too harsh, because this can happen too, then just be aware that that's not the right fit for you. And that can happen even with critique partners, because you can be part of a writer's group, and I have been, and people want to work with you as critique partners. So let's say, you and your friend Jill, you want to work together, and Jill reads your stories, you read Jill's, and Jill will come back and say, no, you shouldn't write this at all. You should just drop this. Well, that's her opinion. That doesn't necessarily make it right. But now if 15 other people tell you the same thing, then you can start saying, okay. So it's about finding someone who even can look at that and say, you know what, I don't know, this element is not the best, but if you do this, this, and this, and those people are gold. So like I have maybe one or two people I trust to let them even see my work before I'm ready to send it anywhere, because their feedback is always what it should be. It's not what they want it to be. It's what they know is going to make my story better. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does, because I do book reviews on my website. I mean, on She Blurs podcast too, I do book reviews. And that gives me a little thought, like maybe I could add that into my reviews, because I never thought of that at all. Like give constructive criticism, like give advice, like what would make the book better. So I'm definitely going to add that to it, because whenever I do review books and I say, I'm blunt about it, I don't like it because of this, and then they're like, why don't you like it? Like, you have to give like reasons why, and a lot of people get mad when you don't give reasons why, or stuff like that. Like a lot of authors that I've come across, they don't like the bluntness. So I've definitely I'm going to take that into consideration.
I agree with that, because it's hard to hear something blunt about something you put your heart and soul into. It's just like, it's almost like an attack on you as the writer. So I'll tell you, sometimes I don't even like to look at my reviews, or I'll look, like if I see a lot of good reviews, and then if I see the one where it's like, well, Kayla could have done this, then I'm like, okay, I don't want to read anymore. And then sometimes I'm like, well, they didn't get the story. And I have to realize not every story is for every person. Exactly. Because especially, like I told you, I write in the romance genre, but some of my more erotic titles are not specifically romance. They have relationships, obviously. So my romance readers who like the more kind of linear, happily ever after, story, might not like my story where she's kind of confused between this guy and this guy. Right. And which I kind of see as maybe a little more realistic. Like, let's say you're with this guy right now, but now comes back your ex who you really were hot for, and he dumped you for no reason, but you still have some chemistry. I find those stories interesting, but not all readers are going to necessarily like that. They might think that this character's being too flaky, but I don't know about you, but I got girlfriends who are like going through this kind of stuff. So I know there are women out there who can relate, and that. It just makes the story more interesting. And again, remembering as the reader that this is a character in this story, and we're following the journey, and not every decision that the character makes is a good decision. That's why it's a book. If every decision she made was a great decision, okay, I'm bored. This is a boring book. You want to see her make a few bad decisions, and how's she going to get out of this? Or, that's what makes stuff a bit more interesting, I think.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, you're definitely gonna make me like think more, because I'm on the writers and promotions page, and a lot of people get mad when they do see the reviews of their books. But I'm like, I've read some of their books, and I'm like, I kind of agree with the review, but I'm not as harsh as the other reviews are. Like,
really,
but I definitely understand. Yeah. I understand now, like, speaking to an author, like how it feels whenever someone's like dumping on your work. like talking trash about your work, and you're like, "What's my baby?" You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you have to think like if you put out your book and
Yes.
someone just was like, I wanted to
Ugh.
slap this character, I didn't like them, but you might feel kind of
Uh,
hurt.
yeah. Like, yeah. So I'm definitely going to take in consideration how I review, like how I speak about the books.
Okay,
So
that's good.
definitely. Because I wouldn't want to step on any toes. I'm like, but yeah, I agree with you there.
Good. You want to convey the message, but in the best way possible. And people have to
Exactly.
be open to hearing the message, which, can still be iffy depending. It's hard.
Yeah, definitely. I want to thank you so much for coming on my show and allowing me to interview you about your book and acting.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
You have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.